Whew. So, hi everybody. Welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day. I kind of had read a couple stories lately that kind of have me worried. And it's not necessarily for the reason they're doing it. Well, it is the reason they're doing it as bad as they are. I know I'm confusing you. Let me explain. So let's talk about lockdowns and stuff like that for now, just quickly. When they introduce lockdown measures, it's to stop the spread of the virus. We are thinking it's to keep everybody safe. It's to keep transmission down, keep cases low, right? That's the logic behind it. My question is, when enforcement and governments go too far, and then the excuse they use to say that why they did it. So for instance, let's just quickly talk about the Quebec curfew. Quebec curfew was instituted for 4 weeks in Quebec in January to stop the spread of the virus. You could not leave your house after 8 o'clock at night. You could not leave, unless you could walk your dog. You couldn't walk a cat. You couldn't walk your husband or spouse. People tried that on a leash. And you couldn't walk two people. You could only walk one person from the household is allowed to walk their animal, and you had to stay within a certain distance of your home, or you face fines and possible arrest. And there were arrests from people trying to say that this is ridiculous. Curfew's gone from 8 o'clock to 9:30 to 8 o'clock, back to 9:30. It's all over the place, but it's going on 4 months now. No longer is it a 4-week curfew, it's been a 4-month curfew, and there's no sign that it's ending, even though the ICU and the hospitalizations are lower than when they instituted the curfew. So they have gone down, they've gone way down, yet they still haven't lifted the curfew. They've extended it to 9:30, so you can stay out an extra hour and a half during the summer. You can let your kids play in the front yard and your backyard after 8 o'clock for another hour and a half. Lucky us, right? But what bothered me more about the curfew is when they asked the health minister in Quebec if this is really going to help cut the curb and stop the curb of the virus. He said, well, no, there's no real proof that this will do anything, and in fact, there's some proof that because we're shortening the hours that people have to shop in the stores and things like that, that more people will congregate in the area at one time than before we issued the curfew. But we want people to know how serious this virus is. That's why we're doing it, to show you how serious it is. So let me get this clear to you right there. He's not saying that it's going to do any good. In fact, he's saying it may do worse for everybody in the province of Quebec. But the reason they're doing it is to make sure you understand something. If you don't understand it, you're going to pay fines, you're going to be locked in your house, and you're not going to be able to get out. It might not do any good. In fact, it might get it worse, but we want to show you just how serious things are. Is that what we should be basing our policies on? I thought we're supposed to base policies on our science. They keep on saying, follow the science, we're following the science. Well, in this case, they didn't follow the science. They followed their power grab of locking people in their homes. Because the science said it's not going to make a difference. And if you look at all the other places, it really hasn't made a single difference. There's still high cases in Quebec as far as spread is concerned. It's nowhere near disappeared. And in fact, it's no worse. It's better than it was when they instituted the curfew. So that's one thing. Recently, a case out in western provinces of Canada of a minister who was breaking the shutdown rules and holding services in his church against the COVID regulations of businesses having to be closed and churches having to be closed, etc. And he was keeping his church open. And the police showed up with 15 armed officers at this church to institute a cease and desist order to a church that was showing no aggression, no signs. Like, this is not somebody locked in his church with a shotgun and saying, keep off our property, blah, blah, you know. He just was keeping his church open, and he didn't believe the lockdown should stop religious freedom in a country that says everybody has religious freedom. So it's now, and by the way, this gentleman was locked up for 35 days. And then the charges were dropped. But you know what? The lawyer for the priest said, you got to keep one of those in there because we want to face these charges in court because we think they are unlawful and unconstitutional. So they ended up having to go to court, and it's in court right now. And in the court, this is where I heard this from, which was flabbergasting to me, is that the police were asked, why did, the officer holding the cease and desist order that went out to talk to the priest, who showed up with 15 armed police officers with her, was asked, why? Why did you have to take all those armed police officers with you? And they said, in court, they did it to prove a point. That really sounds like you're trying to head to a police state. Now, I'm not saying Canada is a police state, but if you take 15 officers to do what one or two officers could have done, just to prove a point on media, so because the cameramen were all, the news media were all told to be there, they are all showing up while they showed up at this church to issue the cease and desist order. So it was a big media presentation, basically, right? A sideshow, if you will. And they say they wanted to make a point, just in case anybody else out there decided they were going to break those regulations. Look how serious it could be. We could show up at your business or at your doorstep if you're hosting a get-together with 30 family members at a birthday party or an anniversary or a wedding or a funeral. We can show up with heavily armed police officers and arrest you, just like we did to a church minister. That's scary. Again, the premise behind what they're doing is perfectly valid. I know you have religious freedom. We're not going to take that away forever. We just need it to stop until the spread and the virus goes down and goes away. Please understand that. That's one thing. But when you start enforcing with extra police officers and making it a media event just to prove a point, or you say this science might actually make things worse if we institute this curfew, but we want to prove a point and make sure you take things seriously. Government is seriously overstretching their authority. And there's nothing constitutional about that. And while you might agree, we have to keep the viruses down, we have to keep the spread down, you have to keep that. Some of the reasoning behind what they're doing to do that, it's not even based on science. It's not even based on it. Ontario is still the only place in North America that two people can't stand 600 yards away from the nearest person and golf. In fact, here in Ottawa, one person was out by themselves on an empty field with a frisbee, playing golf frisbee, where it's basically golf, but you throw a frisbee, and was issued an $800 fine by themselves in a park. Well, it might have actually been on a golf course, but the golf course wasn't open. They weren't paid. He was by himself in a field with nobody around. $800 fine. The reasoning could be there, but the execution really should have a lot of people worried. Because after all, taking away your rights, fining you, locking you in your home, closing your business, skyrocketing debt. After all, it's for your own good.